A full liquidation plan of Canada's oldest retail company could begin today and last for the next 3 months. Hudson's Bay Company has sought court approval to begin immediate liquidation of all 96 stores, including Saks Fifth and Saks Off Fifth locations. So the company had previously asked for creditor protection after admitting it owed more than $1 billion in debt. But despite headlines, the company says a buyer could still step in and save at least a few stores. For more on what all of this means for Canada's most iconic brand and for consumers, I'm joined by retail expert Doug Stevens. He's in Ancaster, Ontario this morning. Great to have you here.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
Listen, it feels so jarring to be talking about this store as Canada's oldest store when we're right in the middle of this resurgence of, buy Canadian and Canadian consumer pride. We have seen retail companies suffer a lot over the years. Have you ever seen a company in this magnitude, of this magnitude, in this kind of position, $1 billion owing?
Yeah, I think it's significant on so many fronts. I mean, obviously, the financial condition of the company is dire, and of course, we're dealing with over 9,000 employees at a time when there's economic doubt, consumer confidence is waning. We're in the middle of a trade war, so not a good time to be in the job market, certainly in the retail sector. And then when you couple that with the historical significance of this brand, not just to retail in Canada, but to Canada, to our foundational history, it really is something on a different order of magnitude.
Yes, 1670, long before we were ever an official country. So how did the Bay get to this point?
Well, you know what? I think it was a number of factors, and this didn't happen overnight, certainly. I think there were a number of things that were external to the brand that the entire retail industry has grappled with over the last few decades. The advent of online shopping certainly would have taken a chunk out of the revenues at Hudson's Bay. I think the contraction of the mid-tier of the market as income and wealth in this country has polarized. And then when you couple that with the fact that most Hudson's Bay locations are in shopping malls, and shopping malls have certainly had their own set of challenges over the years, that has added up to a lot of problems. But there have also been, I think, Anne-Marie, missteps along the way, strategic missteps in the form of really a lack of any defined strategy on the part of the brand to really improve the customer experience, to improve the merchandising. I would argue that really since 2013, this ship has been adrift without any sort of defined strategy in how to move forward.
We've seen little blips, right? So we saw the re-promotion of the Stripes sort of brand and their identity around that. But we've also seen, there was some criticism that they were slow to go online when other retailers, jumped on board, especially during the pandemic. It took them a little bit longer to catch up. Listen, let's talk about the employees. There are more than 9,000, as you mentioned, right across the country with the Bay. Many have been with this company for decades. So what happens to pensions of those long-term staff members?
Yeah, unfortunately, under CCAA protection, there really aren't many protections for workers, which sit on the balance sheet as creditors to the company, but they're very low, unfortunately, on the pecking order. So the company is not obligated to provide severances. There are some minimum protections under Canadian legislation for workers, but it's not very much. Pensions certainly are up in the air, as are benefits. And again, no obligations on the part of the company. Now, there has been, there are some employees that are represented under Unifor, under an employee union, and they are represented under a collective bargaining agreement. And I know the union has been in these negotiations pushing for some protection or some benefit for workers that may be displaced. But again, it's going to depend on how this whole credit process unfolds as we go forward.
Can I ask you a really basic question? What will Bay stores look like? Like when I go online right now, bay.com, I see it doesn't look like there's any problems. Nothing's going on. What will it look like for people who want to walk into a Bay store in the next couple of months?
Yeah, so the reason that you're not seeing anything at the moment is probably because the Ontario Superior Court has not levied a judgment yet. There was a hearing yesterday, and Judge Osborne, who was overseeing that hearing, has declined to make a final decision because I think he understands, A, the complexity of this situation, and B, the fact that a creditor could still step forward. But let's assume it goes forward. Let's assume that this begins to unfold. I think what you're immediately immediately going to see is you're going to see progressive markdowns in store. There is an obligation on the part of the company and the monitor overseeing the process to ensure that inventory is liquidated at the highest possible price. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive. You'd think, why wouldn't they just mark it all down immediately? But they have an obligation to get as much money for that inventory as they can. So this will be a progressive markdown system. And in fact, on day one, customers may be disappointed that there aren't, these incredible deals to be had.
So we'll see shrinking stores, but not the elimination of them anytime soon.
No, it'll be a gradual process, and they will probably begin liquidating in the stores that they value the least, just in case a creditor were to come forward and offer some sort of a lifeline. Okay. They want to ensure that they haven't basically sold the farm by that point. Really great to have your expertise on this one. Doug Stevens, a retail expert, thanks for joining us this morning. Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.